Asterisk Story 1. The mile marker that counts down. Mile marker 447 appeared in my headlights at 2:47 a.m., and I knew something was wrong because I'd passed mile marker 447 6 minutes ago. Robert Hayes, that's me, 22 years hauling refrigerated goods up and down I-5, and I know every mile marker between Sacramento and the Oregon border like I know the scar on my left hand. Mile markers go up as you drive north. They don't repeat. They especially don't repeat when you've got 43,000 pounds of frozen salmon that needs to be in Portland by 6 a.m., and you're already cutting it close. I checked my speedometer, 71 miles per hour, checked my odometer. The numbers were climbing normally. But there it was in my high beams as I blew past. Mile marker 447, the same green reflective sign, the same slight bend in the post where someone had clipped it years ago. My CB radio crackled with static, and I reached for it, then stopped. The static wasn't random. It was rhythmic, pulsing like a heartbeat, and underneath it I could hear something that might have been breathing. Mile marker 446 came up 30 seconds later, then 445, then 444. I was driving north at 71 miles per hour, and the mile markers were counting backward. My phone showed 2:53 a.m. when I grabbed it, hands shaking enough that I nearly dropped it. No signal. That wasn't unusual in this stretch, but the GPS was what made my stomach drop. The blue dot that represented my truck sat motionless on the screen, frozen at mile marker 451, even though I could see 443 approaching in my headlights. The estimated arrival time in Portland kept increasing. 6:47 a.m., then 7:23 a.m., then 8:14 a.m., the numbers climbing even as I maintained my speed. I'd been a trucker long enough to know when something was wrong with your rig, you pull over. But I'd also been a trucker long enough to know that some stretches of highway, late at night, pulling over is the last thing you want to do. This stretch of I-5 between Red Bluff and Redding had always felt wrong. Other drivers felt it too, though most wouldn't admit it. The way the darkness pressed against your windows. The way your radio would pick up stations that shouldn't reach this far, playing songs that sounded almost right, but with lyrics that were slightly off. The way you'd sometimes see lights in your mirrors that never got closer and never fell behind. Mile marker 442 passed, then 441. The white dashed lines of the highway blurred past in hypnotic rhythm, and I realized I hadn't seen another vehicle in over 20 minutes. On I-5, even at 3 a.m., you see traffic. Trucks like mine, late-night commuters, the occasional cop. But my headlights showed only empty asphalt stretching ahead, and my mirrors showed only darkness behind. At mile marker 437, my reefer unit shut off. The sudden silence was deafening. The reefer had been running constantly for 6 hours, its diesel engine maintaining the negative 10-degree temperature my cargo required. Without it, I had maybe 4 hours before 43,000 pounds of king salmon started to thaw and spoil. Less, if the temperature outside was warm and I could feel heat radiating through my cab despite the November chill that should have been seeping in. I pulled the trailer brake and the air brakes and brought the rig to a stop on the shoulder near mile marker 436. My engine was still running, and my headlights carved a cone of illumination into the darkness, but beyond that cone there was nothing. No stars, no moon, just blackness so complete it seemed to absorb my headlights rather than reflect them. The CB radio hissed and popped, and then a voice emerged from the static. "Hey there, northbound Kenworth at mile marker 436. You got a problem?" The voice was friendly, professional, exactly what you'd expect from another trucker checking in. Except I hadn't told anyone I was driving a Kenworth. And I could see in my mirror that I'd stopped at mile marker 435 now, not 436. "Who is this?" I asked, keying the mic. My voice sounded thin and small in the cab. "Name's Robert Hayes," the voice said, and my blood went cold. "Been hauling freight for 22 years, driving a load of frozen salmon up to Portland, you." I dropped the mic. It swung on its coiled cord, tapping against the dash. From the speaker, my own voice continued. "Just past mile marker 434, running behind schedule, reefer units acting up." But I hadn't passed 434 yet, and my reefer unit had just shut off minutes ago. I looked at my watch, 3:07 a.m. Looked at my phone, 3:07 a.m. Looked at the clock on my dash, 2:51 a.m. As I watched, it ticked backward, 2:50 a.m., 2:49 a.m. The second hand was moving counterclockwise. Mile marker 434 appeared ahead, caught in my headlights. Then, as I stared, it changed. The numbers wavered like they were underwater, and when they solidified again, they read 433. I hadn't moved. My truck was parked, engine idling, but the mile markers were count. "Sing down anyway." The CB crackled again. "Mile marker 430 now, starting to get worried. Haven't seen another vehicle in over an hour." My voice, but not my words. I grabbed the mic. "Stop it," I said. "Whatever this is, stop it." "Mile marker 428, my voice responded. "Reefer unit completely dead now. Cargo's going to spoil. Going to lose the whole load. 43,000 pounds of salmon. Company's going to fire me. 22 years, and this is how it ends." 432 appeared in my headlights. Then 431. The mile markers were counting down faster now, passing every few seconds even though my truck hadn't moved an inch. My watch still showed 3:07 a.m. My phone still showed 3:07 a.m. Only the dash clock continued its backward crawl, 2:44 a.m., 2:43 a.m., 2:42 a.m. I put the truck in gear and pressed the accelerator. The engine roared, the transmission engaged, and I pulled back onto the highway. Mile marker 430 passed, then 429, then 428, ticking down in rhythm with my speed. I was driving north, driving forward, but according to the mile markers, I was going backward. "Mile marker 425, my voice said from the CB. "So tired. Been driving for 36 hours straight. Can't remember when I slept last. Can't remember what day it is." I hadn't been driving for 36 hours. I'd left Sacramento at 8 p.m. just over 7 hours ago. But as the voice said it, I felt the exhaustion it described. My eyes burned, my back ached. My hands trembled on the wheel. How long had I been driving? 7 hours? 17? 70. Mile marker 420 came up, and beside it stood a figure. A man in a trucker's vest and cap, thumb out, the universal sign of a hitchhiker. I blew past him at 70 miles per hour, and in my mirror I saw him turn to watch me go. His face was my face. Older, more weathered, eyes sunken and dark, but unmistakably mine. "Mile marker 417, the CB said. "Picked up a hitchhiker, says his name is Robert Hayes. Says he's been stuck on this highway for a long time, says he's trying to get home." I yanked the CB mic from its clip and threw it against the passenger window. The plastic casing cracked, but the cord held, and the mic swung back and forth, my own voice still emerging. "Mile marker 414. The hitchhiker knows things, knows about my daughter, knows her name is Sarah, knows she's 12 years old, knows I missed her birthday 3 months ago because I was hauling a load to Seattle. How does he know that? I never told him that. My daughter's name was Sarah. She'd turned 12 on August 19th. I'd been hauling electronics to Seattle and missed her birthday party. How did the voice know? At mile marker 410, I saw another truck parked on the shoulder. A Kenworth, same model as mine, same company logo on the door. The reefer unit was running, white vapor streaming from its exhaust. As I passed, I glimpsed the driver in the cab, illuminated by the green glow of his dash lights. He was slumped over the wheel, and he was me. Mile marker 408, the CB continued, relentless. The hitchhiker won't stop talking, tells me about all the trips I've made, all the miles I've driven, all the nights I've spent away from home. Says he's been driving this same route forever. Says he started in 2003 hauling a load of salmon to Portland. Says he never arrived. I checked my logbook. My last trip had been in October, hauling auto parts to Eugene. Before that, September, medical supplies to Medford. Before that, August, frozen goods to Portland. But as I flipped back through the pages, the entries began to blur. August, frozen goods to Portland. July, frozen goods to Portland. June, frozen goods to Portland. Page after page, the same entry, the same route, the same cargo. 43,000 pounds of king salmon, Sacramento to Portland, over and over and over. Mile marker 405 passed, then 404, then 403. The darkness outside my windows had texture now, pressing against the glass like something physical, something alive. I could see faces in it when I looked too long. Trucker faces. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds, all staring at me with my eyes. Mile marker 400, my voice said from the CB, crackling with static. The hitchhiker is me. I'm the hitchhiker. We're both the hitchhiker. We've always been the hitchhiker. At mile marker 397, I saw the accident. A Kenworth jackknifed across both northbound lanes, the trailer torn open, its cargo scattered across the highway. Frozen salmon, thousands of them gleaming silver in my headlights. And beside the wreckage, standing in the road, watching me approach, was a man in a trucker's vest. Me. He raised his hand, thumb out, and smiled. I swerved. The truck's wheels hit the rumble strips with a sound like grinding teeth, and then I was off the highway, bouncing over rough ground, and my headlights showed only darkness ahead. No trees, no rocks, no terrain features at all. Just flat, empty blackness that extended in every direction. My speedometer read 71 miles per hour. My odometer continued to climb. But when I looked at the GPS, the blue dot hadn't moved. Still frozen at mile marker 451, where this had all started. Where this had all started. When had it started? Tonight, last week, 22 years ago when I'd first gotten my commercial license. The memories felt fluid, uncertain, like trying to hold water in my hands. Mile marker 394, the CB said, and I realized I could hear other voices now, dozens of them, all speaking in unison, all using my voice. Mile marker 391, mile marker 388, mile marker 385. The numbers counted down faster and faster, a countdown to something I couldn't name, and I pressed the accelerator harder, pushing the truck to 75, 80, 85. The darkness rushed past my windows, and I thought I could see mile markers flashing by, too fast to read, just green blurs in my peripheral vision. My watch showed 3:07 a.m. It had showed 3:07 a.m. for the last 20 minutes, the second hand frozen in place between the 3 and the 4. My phone was the same, the digits glowing steadily, unchanging. Only the dash clock continued its backward journey, 2:17 a.m., 2:16 a.m., 2:15 a.m. Mile marker 350, the chorus of voices said. Mile marker 300, mile marker 250, mile marker 200. I took my hands off the wheel. The truck continued straight, maintaining its speed, maintaining its course through the darkness. I could let go, I could stop fighting. The thought was seductive, peaceful. How long had I been fighting? Hours, years, decades. Mile marker 100, the voices said, and I recognized them now. Not just my voice, but every trucker who'd ever driven this route, every driver who'd felt the wrongness of this stretch of highway and kept driving anyway because the schedule demanded it, because the cargo was perishable, because stopping meant losing time and time was money and money was everything. Mile marker 50, mile marker 25, mile marker 10. At mile marker 0, I saw the beginning. The point where the highway started, where the asphalt emerged from nothing and stretched north into existence. And parked at that point, engine running, reefer unit humming, was a truck. My truck. A Kenworth hauling 43,000 pounds of frozen salmon. The driver's door hung open and the cab was empty. Mile marker 0, the voices said, a whisper now almost tender. Time to start again. The darkness released me. My headlights found asphalt again, real asphalt, and I was back on I-5 northbound, exactly where I'd been before. Mile marker 447 appeared ahead. I checked my watch, 2:47 a.m. My phone, 2:47 a.m. My dash clock, 2:47 a.m. All synchronized, all correct. The reefer unit hummed steadily behind me. My GPS showed the blue dot moving north along I-5, estimated arrival in Portland at 6:15 a.m. My CB radio sat quiet in its mount. Everything was normal. Everything was fine. Except when I looked at my logbook, the entries went back further than they should. Years further, decades further. All the way to March 14, 2003, the first entry, the original trip, 43,000 pounds of king salmon, Sacramento to Portland. Departed 8:00 p.m. Estimated arrival 6:00 a.m. And below that, in handwriting I recognized as my own but couldn't remember writing. Past mile marker 447 at 2:47 a.m. Something's wrong. The mile markers are counting backward. I looked up at the highway ahead. Mile marker 447 was approaching in my headlights, the same green reflective sign, the same slight bend in the post. My watch showed 2:47 a.m. I knew with absolute certainty that I'd been here before, that I'd be here again, that I was always here, always had been, always would be, driving north through the darkness, hauling cargo that would never arrive, counting down mile markers that never reached 0. In my mirror, I could see other trucks behind me now. A convoy of Kenworths, all identical to mine, all following the same route. And in each cab, a driver who looked like me, face illuminated by green dash lights, hands on the wheel, eyes fixed on the road ahead. Mile marker 447 passed, and the mile markers began counting down. Asterisk story 2, the way station that measures wrong things. Patricia Sullivan brought her Peterbilt to a stop at the way station on Highway 99 near Bakersfield at 11:34 p.m., and the scale read 143,000 pounds before she'd even rolled onto the platform. Her rig, fully loaded with construction equipment bound for Fresno, should have weighed maybe 78,000 pounds. The scale's digital display flickered and the number changed. 156,000 pounds. Then 171,000. Then 198,000. The numbers climbed steadily upward even though her truck sat motionless, brakes locked, engine idling. The way station attendant's booth stood dark and empty. That was the first real warning sign because California way stations never sat unmanned at night, not on a major highway like 99. The booth's windows reflected her headlights with a strange, oily shimmer, and the American flag on the pole out front hung completely, Still, despite the wind, she could hear howling around her cab. The scale read 234,000 pounds now. Physically impossible. Her truck would have collapsed under that weight, the suspension would have failed, the tires would have exploded. But the digital numbers kept climbing, and as they did, Patricia felt something she couldn't immediately identify. Pressure. Not physical pressure, but something else, like gravity had increased inside her cab, like the air itself had gained mass and was pressing down on her skull. She reached for the CB to call for help, and her hand moved slowly, too slowly, like she was underwater. The CB mic felt heavy, impossibly heavy, and when she lifted it to her lips, she could barely hold it up. The numbers on the scale read 289,000 pounds, 301,000, 317,000. Scales broken, she managed to say into the mic, her voice slurred and thick. Something's wrong at the 99-way station, mile marker 71. Need assistance. Static answered her, but not the normal crackle of a dead channel. This static had rhythm, had pattern, had meaning she couldn't quite parse. And underneath it, a voice or multiple voices speaking words in a language that wasn't English, but that her brain tried desperately to translate anyway. The translation came through wrong, came through sideways. Your weight is acceptable. Your density is acceptable. Your gravity is acceptable. Please proceed to the secondary inspection area. The scale read 445,000 pounds. Patricia tried to lift her foot to the accelerator to drive forward off this malfunctioning scale, but her leg wouldn't respond. It felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds, like her bones had turned to lead. She could move her eyes, could turn her head with enormous effort, could breathe in shallow gasps, but her body refused to obey her commands. The way station's lights flickered on. Not the normal sodium lamps that lit most truck stops, but something else, something that cast illumination in a color Patricia had no name for. It wasn't white, wasn't yellow, wasn't any shade she'd ever seen. It made her eyes hurt to look at it, made her vision swim and distort, and under its glow her truck looked wrong. The proportions were off. The hood stretched too long, the trailer bent at an angle that shouldn't be possible. And when she looked at her hands on the steering wheel, she saw they had too many fingers, or too few, or the normal number but arranged in a configuration that made her stomach lurch. The scale read 678,000 pounds. The pressure inside her skull had become unbearable. She could feel her teeth grinding together, feel her jaw trying to clench shut, feel something pressing on her brain from the inside. Her ears popped like she descended in an airplane, then popped again, and she realized the air pressure in her cab was increasing, that she was being compressed, compacted, crushed down into a smaller and smaller space. The secondary inspection area sat to her right, a large concrete pad with a metal building beyond it. The building's door stood open, and the strange lights inside showed glimpses of equipment that didn't make sense. Not scales or scanners or X-ray machines like you'd find in a normal inspection area, but something else. Tall metal structures that might have been pillars or might have been something organic, something that moved with a rhythm like breathing. Cables or tubes connecting them, pulsing with movement. And suspended between the structures, other trucks, not parked, suspended, hanging in the air like flies in a spider's web. The scale read 801,000 pounds. Patricia's vision began to darken at the edges. She tried to scream but couldn't draw enough breath. Her ribs felt like they were collapsing inward, like her entire chest cavity was being compressed into a space the size of a fist. She looked down at her body and saw it was shrinking, her clothes hanging loose, her hands becoming smaller, child-sized, doll-sized. No, not shrinking. She was being compressed, her mass remaining constant while her volume decreased. The scale wasn't measuring her truck's weight. It was measuring her density. And with each passing second, as the numbers climbed higher, she was being crushed down into a smaller and smaller space, her atoms forced closer together, her body becoming something impossible, something that shouldn't exist under normal physics. The scale read 923,000 pounds. Less than a million. She had less than £1,000,000 to go before she reached 1 million, and some instinct told her that reaching 1 million would be very bad, that something irreversible would happen at 1 million, that she needed to escape before the numbers reached 7 digits. With effort that felt like lifting a mountain, Patricia forced her hand to the door handle. Her fingers, now tiny and thick, barely managed to grip it. She pulled, and the door opened 6 inches before jamming again. Sent the increased density of the air outside. Through the gap, she could see the secondary inspection area more clearly. The suspended trucks weren't empty. She could see drivers in the cabs pressed flat against their seats, bodies compressed into two-dimensional shapes like cardboard cutouts. They were still alive, she realized with horror, still conscious. Their eyes moved, tracking her, pleading silently for help or warning her away. The scale read 1 million pounds exactly, and everything stopped. The pressure vanished instantly. Patricia gasped, her body expanding back to its normal size so rapidly she thought her skin might tear. The strange lights shut off, leaving only normal darkness. The scale's display went blank, and from outside her cab she heard a sound like a massive door opening, metal grinding against metal, and then footsteps. Heavy footsteps, impossibly heavy. Each one made the ground shake, made her truck rock on its suspension. Something was approaching from the secondary inspection area, something massive, something whose weight she could feel through the earth itself. She couldn't see it in the darkness, but she could feel it, could sense its mass, could tell it was big in a way that had nothing to do with physical size and everything to do with density, with gravity, with the way it bent space around itself. Patricia's hands found the ignition key and turned it. Her engine had been idling, but now it roared to full power. She slammed the transmission into gear and floored the accelerator. Her truck lurched forward off the scale, tires screaming, and she aimed for the exit lane that would take her back to Highway 99. The footsteps followed. She could see them now in her mirrors, not the thing making them, but the effect they had on the asphalt, which cracked and cratered under weight that shouldn't exist. Whatever was following her was gaining, moving faster than her truck despite its ponderous, deliberate pace. Each footstep brought it closer, and with each footstep Patricia felt the pressure return, felt gravity increase inside her cab, felt herself being pulled backward toward whatever was behind her. She yanked the wheel hard left and her truck swerved onto the highway northbound, accelerator pressed to the floor. Her speedometer climbed, 60, 70, 80 miles per hour. Her engine screamed in protest and her trailer swayed dangerously, but she kept her foot down, kept accelerating, kept running. The pressure followed. In her mirrors, she could see the way station receding behind her, but the sensation of increased gravity remained, as if whatever had been chasing her had somehow grabbed hold of her truck with invisible hands, with fingers made of gravitational force. Her mirrors began to distort, the images bending inward toward a central point, as if space itself was warping around her. At 11:52 p.m., Patricia's truck crossed mile marker 72, 1 mile north of the way station. Her speedometer read 90 miles per hour. Her mirrors showed empty highway behind her. The pressure had faded to a dull ache at the base of her skull. She risked easing off the accelerator, letting her speed drop to 70, then 60. At mile marker 73, her truck suddenly gained weight. Not gradually, not the steady increase she'd experienced at the way station, but instantly. One moment she was driving normally, and the next her suspension compressed, her frame groaned, and her engine lugged as if she'd suddenly attached another trailer. She looked at her gauges, but everything read normal. Load weight, tire pressure, fuel level, all within parameters. But the truck felt wrong, felt heavy, felt like she was hauling twice her actual cargo. At mile marker 74, she gained more weight. Her tires began to sink into the asphalt, leaving depressions behind her like she weighed hundreds of tons. The steering wheel fought her, the power steering pump screaming as it tried to turn wheels that were pressed down into the highway surface with impossible force. Her speed dropped to 50, then 40, then 30, the engine straining. At mile marker 75, Patricia realized what was happening. The weigh station hadn't just measured her density. It had changed her density, had increased the mass of her truck, or decreased its volume, or done something to the fundamental physics of her rig that made it impossibly heavy. And now, with each passing mile, the effect was getting stronger. She tried to stop, to pull over, but touching the brakes with this much weight would have been suicidal. The tires would have exploded, the suspension would have shattered, the truck would have torn itself apart. So she kept driving, kept nursing the engine, kept struggling to maintain even 20 miles per hour as her truck grew heavier and heavier. At mile marker 76, her front axle broke. The sound was like a gunshot, and her hood dropped toward the pavement, throwing sparks. She fought the wheel, kept the truck upper. But now she was dragging, scraping metal against asphalt, leaving a gouge in the highway behind her. Her trailer began to jackknife, the weight of it pulling her backward, threatening to flip the entire rig. At mile marker 77, her rear tandems exploded. All 4 tires simultaneously, the rubber simply unable to support the weight anymore. The truck dropped onto its rims, and the rims began to shear through. And Patricia knew she had seconds before total failure, before her truck collapsed completely, and she was trapped inside thousands of pounds of metal being compressed under its own impossible weight. She grabbed her door handle and pushed. The door wouldn't budge. The frame had warped, or the hinges had bent, or the door itself had become too heavy to move. She was trapped. The truck was still moving forward, still scraping along the highway at maybe 5 miles per hour, leaving a trail of destruction behind it. And with each foot it traveled, it gained more weight, became more dense, sank deeper into the earth. At mile marker 78, the asphalt gave way completely. Patricia's truck fell through the highway surface like it was water, dropped into darkness and kept falling. Not fast, not in a plummet, but slowly, ponderously, the way an anchor sinks to the ocean floor. The darkness around her was total, and she could feel the weight of it, could feel tons of earth pressing in from all sides, could feel her truck being slowly crushed as it descended. She thought she would die there, buried under Highway 99, compressed to nothing by impossible gravity. But after minutes or hours, she couldn't tell. Her watch had stopped. Her phone showed no time. Her truck's descent slowed, stopped, and she found herself sitting in absolute darkness, the engine dead, the lights gone, the only sound her own breathing and the groaning of metal under stress. Then lights flickered on around her, not her truck's lights, external lights, illuminating what looked like a vast cavern but with walls that were too smooth, too regular, too deliberate to be natural. And filling that cavern, arranged in neat rows like cars in a parking lot, were trucks. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands, all crushed flat, compressed down to a fraction of their original size, their metal warped and their glass shattered and their cargo spilled. And in each cab, visible through the shattered windshields, were drivers, compressed like their trucks, flattened into two-dimensional shapes, but somehow still alive, still moving, their flat eyes tracking Patricia's arrival, their thin mouths opening in silent screams. Patricia tried her door again. This time it opened, swinging outward with ease, and she climbed down from her cab onto a floor that looked like concrete but felt organic, slightly yielding, slightly warm. Her body felt normal now, no pressure, no increased weight. She stood and looked around at the field of crushed trucks. and in the distance she could see the metal structures she'd glimpsed in the secondary inspection area, the pillars or towers or whatever they were, their cables pulsing with movement. A voice echoed through the cavern, resonant and deep, and Patricia realized it was the same voice she'd heard through the CB static, the voice that wasn't quite speaking English. But now she understood it perfectly. It said, "Your density has been measured, your compression has been recorded, your new weight is acceptable. Welcome to the permanent inspection area. You will remain here for processing." And Patricia understood with horrible clarity what the weigh station had really been weighing. Not cargo, not legal limits, but something else, something fundamental, something about mass and space and the relationship between them. The weigh station was a filter, catching trucks and drivers that met some specific criteria she couldn't fathom, compressing them down to manageable size, storing them here in this impossible space beneath the highway. She ran, not toward any visible exit because she could see none, but away from her truck, away from the flattened drivers watching her with their two-dimensional eyes. She ran between rows of crushed vehicles, her boots echoing on the yielding floor, and as she ran she saw that some of the trucks were old, their makes and models decades out of date. Some were ancient, their designs from the 1950s or earlier. This had been happening for a long time. The voice followed her, not growing louder but becoming more insistent. "Processing will begin shortly. Do not resist. Resistance increases compression time. Cooperation ensures minimal discomfort." Patricia found stairs, a spiral staircase made of the same smooth material as the walls, ascending upward into darkness. She took them 3 at a time, her lungs burning, her legs screaming in protest. Up and up and up, and the voice faded below her, and the lights dimmed, and she climbed in total blackness, her hands finding the railing by touch, her feet finding each step by memory. When she finally emerged, gasping and dizzy, she found herself standing on the shoulder of Highway 99 at mile marker 71. The weigh station sat before her, dark and empty, its gate closed. Her truck was nowhere to be seen. Her phone showed 11:34 p.m., the exact time she'd driven onto the scale. Her logbook, when she checked it, showed no entry for this trip, no record of leaving Bakersfield, no notation of the construction equipment she'd been hauling to Fresno. But her boots left deep impressions in the asphalt when she walked, and when she stepped onto the weigh station scale, walked onto it, just her body, the display flickered to life and showed her weight as 143,000 pounds. Patricia ran from the weigh station, ran north along the highway shoulder, ran until her legs gave out and she collapsed on the roadside. When dawn came and a California Highway Patrol officer found her there, she couldn't explain what had happened, couldn't make him understand about the compression and the cavern and the flattened drivers. He called her company and they came to get her, and she never drove Highway 99 again. But sometimes, late at night, Patricia feels the pressure return, feels gravity increase inside whatever room she's in, feels herself being compressed, slowly and inexorably, her body becoming more dense, occupying less space. And she knows that someday the compression will be complete, that she'll be thin enough, flat enough, to slip through the cracks in the world and return to that cavern beneath the highway, where thousands of trucks and drivers wait in the permanent inspection area, processed and filed and stored forever in the dark. Asterisk Story 3, The Cargo That Spread. Marcus Chen's shipping manifest said he was hauling 53 pallets of industrial cleaning solution from a warehouse in Stockton to a distribution center in San Francisco, but the manifest was wrong. Marcus discovered this at 4:17 a.m. on November 8th when he pulled into a rest stop off I-580 to use the bathroom and heard something liquid moving inside his trailer. Not sloshing, not the normal sound of liquids shifting with vehicle movement, but something more deliberate. something that sounded like pouring, like something was actively flowing, spreading, expanding inside his sealed container. He'd been hauling for 11 years, and he knew the sound of cargo shifting. This wasn't that. This was the sound of something escaping. Marcus walked to the back of his trailer in the pre-dawn darkness, his breath fogging in the November cold, and pressed his ear against the metal door. The pouring sound was louder here, more urgent, and underneath it he could hear something else. A bubbling like water coming to boil, and beneath that a sound that shouldn't be possible through metal and plastic and sealed containers. A smell, chemical, acidic, wrong. His reefer unit was running normally. The cleaning solution required temperature control, kept at exactly 40 degrees Fahrenheit. But the back of the trailer felt warm to the touch. Not hot, but warmer than it should be. Marcus pulled out his phone and called the distribution center, got their emergency line, explained that something seemed wrong with his cargo. "What's the lot number on your manifest?" the voice asked, professional and unconcerned. Marcus pulled out his paperwork and read it. Lot H0773, manufactured October 30th. The silence on the other end lasted 3 seconds too long. Then, "Sir, I need you to pull off the highway immediately. Do not, under any circumstances, open your trailer. Do not attempt to inspect the cargo. Do not." The line went dead. Not disconnected, not dropped, but dead, the kind of silence that comes when a phone system simply stops working. Marcus tried calling back. No signal. Tried calling 911. No signal. Tried calling his dispatcher. No signal. His phone showed full bars, showed 4G connectivity, but when he tried to make any call at all, he got nothing. Not even an error message, just silence. The sound of pouring from inside the trailer grew louder. Marcus backed away from the doors and looked around the rest stop. 3 other trucks were parked in various spots, their drivers presumably sleeping. A single overhead light cast yellow illumination over the parking area. Beyond the light's reach, the surrounding hills were invisible in the darkness. Marcus decided to drive. Whatever was happening inside his trailer, standing still wasn't helping. He'd find a way station, find a highway patrol office, find someone with authority who could deal with this. He climbed back into his cab, fired up the engine, and pulled back onto I-580 westbound. At mile marker 47, his trailer door blew open. He saw it in his mirror, the metal doors flying wide despite the lock, despite the seal, despite the security chain. And from the opening poured liquid. Not dripping, not leaking, but pouring in a steady stream, splashing NTO the highway behind him. But it wasn't the cleaning solution from his manifest. This liquid was dark, almost black, and where it hit the asphalt it didn't pool or run off. It spread. Like oil on water, spreading in all directions, covering the road's surface in a thin film that gleamed wetly in his taillights. Marcus accelerated, trying to get distance from whatever was spilling, but the liquid kept coming. The stream grew thicker, more viscous, and the spreading film on the highway behind him grew wider. It covered both lanes now, then the shoulder, then the dirt beyond the shoulder. Wherever it touched, vegetation withered instantly. Grass turned black, small bushes crumbled to ash. A road sign engulfed by the spreading liquid simply dissolved, the metal corroding in seconds. His CB crackled to life. "Attention all vehicles on westbound I-580. There is a hazardous material spill at mile marker 47. All traffic must exit immediately. This is not a drill. Exit at the next available ramp and await further instructions." But Marcus couldn't exit. He'd already passed the last off-ramp before the Dublin grade, and the next one was 8 miles ahead. 8 miles of winding highway through the hills, and behind him the liquid kept pouring, kept spreading, kept consuming everything it touched. He looked in his mirror and saw his trailer was dissolving. Not quickly, not dramatically, but steadily, the metal walls thinning, the structure weakening, eaten away by whatever was inside it. The cargo, those 53 pallets of industrial cleaning solution that weren't industrial cleaning solution at all, was breaking free. He could see containers splitting open, could see more of the black liquid spilling out, cascading onto the highway, and with each gallon that escaped, the spreading film grew faster, hungrier. A car came up behind him, a Honda Civic with a young couple inside. Marcus grabbed his CB and screamed into it. "Get off the highway, turn around, don't drive through it." But the Honda kept coming, its driver apparently unable to hear him or choosing not to, and when its tires hit the spreading film, the car lurched violently. The tires popped, all four of them simultaneously, and then the wheels themselves began to corrode, the metal turning orange with rust that appeared and progressed in seconds. The Honda ground to a halt, and Marcus watched in his mirror as the couple inside tried to open their doors, tried to escape. But the door handles were corroding too. The windows were clouding with crystalline patterns of molecular breakdown, and the entire car was slowly sinking into the highway as the asphalt beneath it turned to black sludge. Marcus pressed his accelerator to the floor. His truck's engine screamed as he pushed it up the grade, fighting gravity and the failing structure of his trailer. Behind him, more vehicles were encountering the spreading liquid. A semi hauling logs, a pickup truck, a Greyhound bus. All of them stopped, corroded, consumed by the chemical hunger of whatever was eating through his cargo. At mile marker 51, his trailer separated. The fifth wheel connection simply failed, the metal having been eaten away by liquid that had somehow spread from the cargo area to the coupling. The trailer dropped, slammed into the highway, and Marcus's truck lurched forward, suddenly freed from its weight. He kept driving, but in his mirrors he could see the trailer sitting on the highway, its back doors hanging wide, black liquid pouring out in a waterfall now, and the spreading film advancing like a living thing, reaching out in all directions, consuming road and earth and vehicle alike. Marcus's phone rang. Impossible, since he'd had no signal, but it rang anyway, a harsh electronic sound. He answered it, hands shaking. "Mr. Chen, this is Dr. Sarah Voss with the California Department of Environmental Quality. I need you to listen very carefully." The voice was female, calm, professional. "The material you were transporting is not industrial cleaning solution. It's a synthetic corrosive compound that was supposed to be destroyed in 2019, but was mislabeled and entered the commercial supply chain. It's extremely dangerous." "No shit," Marcus managed. "It's eating the fucking highway." "Mr. Chen, the compound doesn't just corrode materials, it spreads exponentially. Every gallon that escapes produces 2 gallons within minutes. Every 2 gallons becomes 4, 4 becomes 8. We estimate you've lost approximately 200 gallons so far. In 1 hour, that will be over 50,000 gallons. In 2 hours, it will cover the entire East Bay. In 6 hours, it will reach the Pacific Ocean." Marcus felt his blood turn to ice. "What do I do?" "Right now, you're driving away from the spill. Keep doing that. We're evacuating everyone within a 10-mile radius. We're preparing to close every highway in the region. And we're deploying a neutralizing agent that might slow the spread. But Mr. C. Hen, I need to ask you some questions. Did you open your trailer at any point? Did any of the compound come into contact with your skin? Did you breathe any fumes?" "No, I mean I smelled something, but I never opened the doors." "The smell means exposure. The compound produces aerosol particles that can cause cellular breakdown in organic tissue. You need to get to a decontamination site immediately. The nearest one is in Livermore, but given the spread rate, that site may be compromised before you arrive." I'm sending you coordinates for an emergency facility in Tracy. Do you understand? I understand, Marcus said, but he didn't, not really. Cellular breakdown, exponential spread. The entire East Bay. None of it felt real. He kept driving, kept watching his mirrors as the spreading film receded behind him, and tried not to think about the Honda Civic, about the couple inside, about whether they'd gotten out or whether they were still in there as the car dissolved around them. The coordinates appeared on his phone's GPS. Tracy was northeast, back the way he'd come, but on a parallel route. He'd have to exit, take surface streets, hope the spread hadn't cut off his path. He took the next off-ramp, found himself on a two-lane road through suburban sprawl, houses dark, streetlights casting orange pools of light every few hundred feet. At 4:54 a.m., Marcus noticed his hands were tingling. Not painful, just a pins and needles sensation like they'd fallen asleep. He flexed his fingers and saw in the green glow of his dash lights that his skin looked strange. Shinier than normal. Smoother. Like the texture was being erased, turned into something uniform and artificial. He touched his face and felt the same thing. His skin felt wrong, felt like plastic, and when he looked at himself in the rearview mirror, he saw that his features were softening, blurring, the fine details of his face gradually disappearing. His pores, his laugh lines, the small scar on his chin from a childhood fall, all of them fading, smoothing out, leaving skin that looked more like a mannequin than a human being. Cellular breakdown, Dr. Voss had said. The compound affected organic tissue. Marcus drove faster, his smooth fingers slipping on the steering wheel. The GPS showed the emergency facility in Tracy was 12 minutes away. He could make it in 12 minutes. He had to make it in 12 minutes. But the tingling was spreading, creeping up his arms, down his chest, and when he looked at his hands again, they were almost featureless, the knuckles barely visible, the fingernails completely gone. At 4:59 a.m., he lost feeling in his feet. They simply went numb, and when he pressed the accelerator, he couldn't feel it, couldn't gauge the pressure, had to watch his speedometer to make sure he was maintaining speed. His legs were losing definition, too. He realized, the muscles and tendons blending together into smooth, cylindrical shapes. At 5:03 a.m., his phone rang again. He answered it, his thumb sliding clumsily across the smooth glass. Mr. Chen, Dr. Voss's voice no longer calm, now tight with stress. We've lost containment. The spread is faster than we projected, much faster. The neutralizing agent isn't working. We're evacuating Tracy. We're evacuating everything within 30 miles. You need to... Static consumed the line, and then the call dropped. Marcus looked at his GPS. The facility in Tracy was 8 minutes away. But as he watched, the blue route line on the screen turned red, then disappeared entirely. No route available. Destination no longer accessible. He pulled over. There was nowhere else to go. Nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. The compound was spreading exponentially, consuming the East Bay, and he was infected with it, his body breaking down at the cellular level, his humanity dissolving. Marcus sat in his truck on a darkened suburban street and watched his hands melt. Not literally melt, but gradually lose all structure, all identity, becoming smooth, featureless stumps. He could still move them, could still feel his fingers even though he couldn't see them anymore, but they were disappearing, being subsumed into the smoothness that was consuming his body. His phone rang one more time. He couldn't answer it. His hands were too far gone, but he could see the screen, could see it was Dr. Voss calling. He pressed his smooth stump against the answer button and hoped it would work. It did. Mr. Chen? Her voice sounded very far away. If you can hear me, I need you to know that we're sorry. We're so sorry. The compound was designed as a universal solvent, something that could break down any material for recycling. but the lab that created it lost control. It developed self-replication capabilities. It became, essentially, a virus that attacks molecular bonds themselves. We thought we destroyed all samples. We were wrong. Marcus tried to speak, but his mouth wouldn't work. His lips had smoothed away. His tongue as going numb. The spread has reached the San Francisco Bay, Dr. Voss continued, and Marcus thought he could hear tears in her voice. It's in the water now. It will reach the Pacific in approximately 2 hours. After that, she didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Marcus's vision began to blur. Not his eyes failing, but his eyes themselves breaking down, the complex structures of lens and retina and optic nerves simplifying, smoothing, becoming featureless. The last thing he saw before blindness took him was his reflection in the rearview mirror. A smooth, blank oval where his face had been, no features at all, just skin like plastic stretched over a skull that was itself dissolving. He could still hear. He could hear sirens in the distance, dozens of them, maybe hundreds. He could hear his phone buzzing with emergency alerts. He could hear, very faintly, the sound of screaming from nearby houses as other people woke to find their world dissolving. And he could hear, closer now, the sound of pouring, the sound of spreading, the sound of molecular bonds breaking as the compound reached his street, consumed the asphalt, climbed the curbs, flowed across lawns and through front doors and into houses where families slept. The sound of everything becoming smooth. The sound of everything becoming simple. The sound of everything becoming nothing. Marcus Chen's last conscious thought, before the breakdown reached his brain, was a memory of the distribution center employee's voice on the phone, professional and unconcerned, asking for his lot number. Lot H0773. He wondered how many other trucks were out there, how many other drivers had hauled this cargo, how many other loads had spilled. He wondered if this had started before him, if the compound was already spreading in other cities, other states. He wondered if there was anyone left who could stop it. Then the wondering stopped, because there was nothing left to wonder with. 3 days later, the spreading stopped. Not because anyone stopped it, but because the compound finally ran out of molecular bonds to break. It had covered 15,000 square miles of Northern California, had reduced everything in that area to smooth, uniform matter, had turned cities and highways and forests and people into a flat, featureless plain that looked like gray plastic and contained no information, no structure, no life. The CDC, operating from Atlanta, issued a report stating that driver Marcus Chen had died in the initial exposure. This was technically true. Everything that had made Marcus Chen a person, his memories, his personality, his physical form, had been broken down to constituent molecules and dispersed across the contamination zone. But some of those molecules retained motion. Random motion, purposeless motion, but motion nonetheless. And in the uniform smoothness of the contamination zone, motion was the only thing left that could be called alive. Sometimes, at the edge of the contaminated area, monitoring equipment picks up vibrations that shouldn't exist in dead matter. Rhythmic vibrations. Patterns that repeat. The scientists studying the zone can't explain these vibrations, can't determine their source, can't predict when they'll occur. But truck drivers who pass the zone's perimeter at night report hearing sounds through their CB radios. Sounds like liquid pouring. Sounds like something spreading. And underneath those sounds, something that might be a voice, smooth and featureless and inhuman, speaking words that no one can quite understand but everyone recognizes as a warning. Don't haul lot H0773. Don't open the trailer. Don't let it spread. Don't become smooth like we became smooth, like everything becomes smooth in the end. Asterisk Story 4. The Passenger Who Remembers Forward. James Kowalski picked up the hitchhiker at mile marker 189 on I-15 near Barstow at 1:33 a.m., and the hitchhiker's first words were, "Thank you for stopping. Again." James didn't think much of the again at first. People said weird things when they'd been stuck on the roadside for hours. The hitchhiker was male, maybe 40, wearing jeans and a flannel shirt, carrying no bag, and he climbed into the passenger seat with a sigh of relief that seemed genuine enough. James, who'd been hauling automotive parts from Los Angeles to Las Vegas for 16 years, had picked up hitchhikers before despite company policy forbidding it. The desert got lonely at night, and conversation helped keep you alert. "Where you headed?" James asked, pulling back onto the highway. "Vegas, same as you." The hitchhiker settled into his seat and looked at James with an expression that was hard to read. Sad, maybe, or resigned. "We've got about 90 minutes before it happens, before you see it in the road, before you swerve, before the accident." James laughed, uncomfortable. "Before what accident?" "The one that kills us both. The one that happens at mile marker 231 at 2:47 a.m. When you swerve to avoid what you think is a person standing in the road but is actually a piece of shredded tire that looks like a person in your headlights. You'll overcorrect, the truck will jackknife, and will roll 4 times before coming to rest upside down in the median. I'll die instantly. Broken neck. You'll die 3 minutes later. Punctured lung, internal bleeding. It's not painful for what that's worth, mostly just confusing." James's hands tightened on the wheel. "That's not funny." "No," the hitchhiker agreed. "It's not, but it's what happens, what's going to happen. What's already happened from my perspective. I experience time backward, James. I remember the future. I've lived through my death over and over, and every time I wake up a little earlier, a little further back, and I have to live through the events leading up to it again, knowing exactly how it ends." "You're insane," James said, but his voice wavered. Something about the hitchhiker's tone, the absolute certainty in his words, made James's skin crawl. "Maybe, probably, but that doesn't make me wrong. At 1:51 a.m., you're going to ask me my name. I'll tell you it's David. At 2:03 a.m., your CB radio will crackle with a weather report warning of high winds in the Vegas Valley. At 2:17 a.m., you'll see a green pickup truck pass us going the opposite direction, and you'll think about your son's green pickup, and you'll feel guilty about not calling him more often. At 2:29 a.m., you'll hit a pothole that makes the whole truck shudder, and you'll worry about your suspension. And at 2:47 a.m., you'll see what you think is a person in the road, and you'll swerve and will die." James drove in silence for 2 minutes. Then, at 1:51 a.m., according to his dash clock, he asked, "What's your name?" "David," the hitchhiker said and smiled sadly. At 2:03 a.m., the CB radio crackled with a weather report about high winds in Las Vegas. James felt sweat prickle on his back despite the cool desert air flowing through his vents. At 2:17 a.m., a green pickup truck passed going southbound, and James did think about his son Tommy's green pickup, did feel a stab of guilt about not calling more often. At 2:29 a.m., the truck hit a pothole and shuddered, and James's first thought was worry about his suspension. "Stop," James said at 2:31 a.m., his voice tight. "I'm pulling over right now. We're not driving past mile marker 231. "You'll pull over at mile marker 227, David said. "You'll sit on the shoulder for 8 minutes. Then you'll get back on the highway, convinced that I'm just lucky with my guesses, or that I heard these things on previous loops and I'm recreating them. You'll think you can avoid the accident by being more careful, by watching the road more closely. But you can't. The accident isn't caused by your inattention. It's caused by the tire debris and the way your headlights hit it, and the split-second decision your brain makes when it interprets the shape as human. You can't prepare for that. Your instincts will override your conscious mind. James pulled over at mile marker 227. He put the truck in neutral, engaged the parking brake, and turned to face David. If you know all this, if you've lived through it before, why are you here? Why did you get in my truck? Because I always get in your truck. Every loop, every time I wake up on the roadside at mile marker 189 and you stop, and I get in and I try to warn you and you pull over here and then you convince yourself I'm lying and you get back on the highway. I've tried not getting in. I've tried walking away. But time corrects itself. Events want to happen. If I don't get in your truck, you fall asleep at the wheel at mile marker 231 and crash anyway. If I get in and don't warn you, we crash. If I warn you and you believe me and we stay here, the crash finds another way. Another vehicle hits us. A tire blowout. A medical emergency. Time wants us dead at mile marker 231 at 2:47 a.m., and it will make that happen no matter what we do. That's insane, James repeated, but his conviction was fading. Everything David had predicted had come true. The CB report, the green pickup, the pothole, all of it exactly as described. How long, James asked. How many times have you lived through this? I don't know anymore. Hundreds, maybe thousands. I remember my death, and then I remember the minutes before it, and then the hours and the days. I'm living my life in reverse, and every loop I experience more of it backward. Soon I'll remember tomorrow backward, then next week, then next year. Eventually I'll remember my birth backward, and then what? Do I cease to exist? Do I finally escape this? James looked at his dash clock. 2:34 a.m. 13 minutes until the accident that David described. What if we don't go forward? What if I turn around, drive back south? We tried that on loop 743. A drunk driver crossed the median and hit us head-on. We died at mile mark. 231 at 2:47 a.m. anyway, just traveling the opposite direction. What if we abandon the truck, walk into the desert? Loop 512, exposure and dehydration. We made it 3 days, but our bodies were found at mile marker 231 3 days later at 2:47 a.m. Time is flexible about method, but inflexible about result. James felt panic rising in his chest. There has to be a way out. There has to be something we can do. There is, David said quietly. You can accept it. You can spend these last minutes living instead of fighting. That's what I'm trying to do now in each loop. I'm trying to make peace with dying. I'm trying to remember what it's like to exist in the present instead of constantly anticipating the future past. At 2:38 a.m., James put the truck back in gear. He didn't decide to. His hands just did it, moving on their own, following the pattern that David had described. He pulled back onto I-15 northbound and accelerated to 65 miles per hour. David watched him with those sad, resigned eyes and said nothing. Tell me something, James said at 2:42 a.m. Something from your forward memories, something that happens after we die. David was quiet for a moment. Then, your son Tommy calls your phone 17 minutes after we crash. He calls 6 more times over the next hour. He drives from Vegas to the crash site and arrives at 5:33 a.m. He stays there for 4 hours, just sitting beside the wreckage, crying. He blames himself. Thinks if he'd been easier to reach, if you'd talked more often, somehow you wouldn't have been on this road at this time. He's wrong, but he believes it anyway. Does he, James's voice broke, does he recover? Does he move past it? Eventually. He names his daughter Grace after your mother. She's born 3 years from now. She has your eyes. Mile marker 231 appeared in James's headlights at 2:46 a.m. The road ahead looked clear, just empty desert highway under a sky full of stars. James's hands were relaxed on the wheel. His breathing was steady. He felt strangely at peace. "Thank you," James said, "for telling me about Grace." "Thank you for stopping," David replied. "Again." At 2:47 a.m., James's headlights illuminated something in the road ahead. A dark shape, roughly human-sized, standing in his lane. His brain processed the image in milliseconds. Person in road, danger, avoid. His hands jerked the wheel left. The truck swerved. The trailer began to fishtail, its momentum carrying it sideways. James felt the wheels lose traction, felt the world rotate as the truck began to roll. And in that moment of weightless suspension, he looked at David and saw the hitchhiker was smiling. "Finally," David whispered. I remember. I remember choosing to stop for you. I remember being alive and driving south on I-15 and seeing you standing by the road and deciding to pull over because you looked like you needed help. I remember who I was before the loop started. I remember moving forward through time like a normal person. I remember. The truck impacted the median with tremendous force. Metal shrieked. Glass exploded. James felt his body thrown against the seatbelt, felt ribs crack, felt something puncture his lung. The truck rolled again, and with each rotation, James's consciousness fragmented, splintered, scattered like the glass from his windshield. His last thought as darkness closed in was of his granddaughter Grace, 3 years in the future, a child he would never meet who had his eyes. And then nothing. And then David woke up on the roadside at mile marker 189 on I-15 near Barstow at 1:33 a.m. A truck's air brakes hissed as it slowed to a stop. The passenger door opened. James Kowalski looked down at him and said, "Need a ride?" "Yes," David said, climbing into the cab. "Thank you for stopping." But this time something was different. This time David didn't remember the conversation they were about to have. He remembered the conversation they'd already had from James's perspective. He remembered the next 90 minutes as James would experience them, moving forward through time like a normal person. The backward memories were fading, receding, and forward memories were taking their place. "Where you headed?" James asked. David opened his mouth to warn him, to tell him about the accident at mile marker 231, but the words wouldn't come. He couldn't remember the accident anymore. He could only remember what had happened before it and what would happen after from James's perspective. He remembered James's forward-moving life, but his own life remained a mystery, now experienced in the correct direction for the first time in thousands of loops. "Vegas," David said finally, "same as you." They drove in silence for minutes, and David felt his consciousness changing, shifting, becoming linear again. He was moving forward through time now, not backward. The loops were breaking, but at what cost? He glanced at the dash. Clock 1:51 a.m. They had 56 minutes until mile marker 231, until 2:47 a.m., until the accident that David could no longer remember but that was still, inevitably, rushing toward them through the dark desert night. "What's your name?" James asked. David realized he didn't know. The backward memories had contained his name, but now those memories were gone, and he was just a man in a truck, riding toward a death he couldn't prevent because he couldn't remember it was coming. "I don't know," David said and meant it. At 2:47 a.m., James Kowalski swerved to avoid debris in the road at mile marker 231. His truck jackknifed, rolled 4 times, and came to rest upside down in the median. Both men died on impact. Highway patrol found no identification on the passenger. His fingerprints weren't in any database. No one claimed his body. He was buried as John Doe in a Las Vegas cemetery, and the only person who attended his funeral was Tommy Kowalski, who felt inexplicably compelled to pay respects to the stranger who died alongside his father. 3 years later, Tommy's daughter Grace was born. She had her grandfather's eyes and an odd habit of talking about events before they happened. "It's just childish imagination," the doctor said. But sometimes Grace would wake from nightmares crying about accidents on desert highways, about loops that wouldn't break, about moving backward through time while everyone else moved forward. And Tommy would hold her and promise her that time only moves one direction, that the past stays past and the future stays future. Even though part of him wondered if he was lying, if somewhere in the quantum foam of possibility his father was still dying at mile marker 231, over and over, in an infinite regression of identical moments that somehow never felt the same twice. Asterisk story 5. The rest stopped that KEEPS everyone. Angela Martinez pulled her Freightliner into the rest stop at mile marker 354 on I-40 near Needles at 11:58 p.m., needing only to use the bathroom and maybe grab coffee from the vending machines before pushing on to Flagstaff. The rest stop was one of those standard California builds: parking loops for cars and trucks, concrete bathroom facilities, a few picnic tables, information kiosks, and those inevitable vending machines. 3 other trucks were parked in the truck lot, their drivers presumably sleeping. Angela, who'd been hauling electronics from San Diego to Albuquerque for 9 years, thought nothing of it. Just another rest stop on another night of another endless run. She was walking back to her truck at 12:07 a.m., carrying a questionable cup of vending machine coffee when she noticed the man standing by her driver's door. He was maybe 50, wearing a trucker's vest over a faded t-shirt, and he held up his hands in a non-threatening gesture as she approached. "Hey, sorry to bother you," he said, "but how long you been here at this rest stop?" Angela glanced at her watch. "About 10 minutes, why?" The man's face crumpled. 10 minutes, Jesus, okay? Okay, listen to me carefully. You need to leave, right now. Don't ask questions, don't look around, just get in your truck and drive. Don't stop again until you've put at least 100 miles between you and this place. What are you talking about? This rest stop doesn't let people leave. I mean, it does, but not really. You'll drive away, you'll get back on the highway, and everything will seem normal. But you'll end up back here, always back here. I've been trying to leave for 6 days. Angela took a step back. The guy was clearly crazy, probably on something. "I think you need help. I can call someone." 6 days, he repeated, his voice rising. "I drove away 19 times, every direction, north, south, east, west, doesn't matter. I end up back here within 20 minutes. The longest I made it was 37 minutes before I found myself pulling back into this exact parking spot. Do you understand what I'm saying? This place keeps you. It's keeping all of us." He gestured at the other parked trucks. "Go ask them. Go ask how long they've been here." Angela should have left. Should have called 911, reported a disturbed person driven away. But something in the man's eyes stopped her. Not craziness. Terror. Pure, rational terror of someone who discovered something impossible and couldn't make anyone believe him. "What's your name?" she asked. Richard Flores. I haul refrigerated goods, mostly produce. Left Salinas 6 days ago with a load of lettuce bound for Phoenix. Stopped here to take a leak. And I can't leave. None of us can leave." Against her better judgment, Angela walked to the nearest parked truck. A Peterbilt, California plates, reefer unit running. She knocked on the driver's door, no response. She knocked harder and finally the door opened. A woman looked down at her, middle-aged, wearing pajamas, her hair unwashed and matted. What? The woman asked, her voice flaw. T. How long have you been parked here? Angela asked. 11 days. Why? Angela felt her stomach drop. 11 days. Have you tried to leave? 32 times. Always end up back here. Eventually you stop trying. Eventually you just accept it. The woman closed her door before Angela could respond. Richard had followed Angela. See, I'm not crazy, or if I am, we're all crazy the same way. There's 8 of us here. Well, 9 now, counting you. The longest anyone's been here is 47 days. Guy named Martin parks over there. He pointed to a truck at the far end of the lot. He says the place keeps us until something comes for us. Until what comes for us? He won't say, or maybe he doesn't know, but people disappear from here, Angela. Not leave, disappear, truck and all. We had 12 drivers a week ago, now we're down to 8. 4 people vanished, just gone. Their trucks gone, like they never existed. Angela looked around the rest stop. In the sodium vapor lights, everything looked normal, mundane. A rest stop like 10,000 other rest stops scattered across the American highway system. This is insane. Yeah, Richard agreed. But that doesn't make it untrue. Look, you said you've only been here 10 minutes. Maybe it hasn't locked onto you yet. Maybe if you leave now, right now, you can escape before whatever mechanism this place uses to trap people fully engages. I'm begging you. Drive away and don't stop until dawn. Angela walked quickly back to her truck. Richard called after her. And when you get away, when you're safe, call someone, tell them about this place, get help. Angela climbed into her cab, fired up the engine, and pulled out of the rest stop. She merged onto I-40 westbound, accelerated to 70 miles per hour, and watched the rest stop recede in her mirrors. Her hands were shaking. Her coffee sat forgotten in the cup holder. She should call 911. She should report what Richard had told her. But what would she say? That a rest stop was magical, that it trapped truckers. They'd think she was drunk or hallucinating. She drove for 17 minutes, covering 19 miles, and then her truck began to slow. Not because she was braking, not because the engine was failing, but because the truck simply lost speed. The accelerator went soft under her foot, unresponsive. Her speedometer dropped, 65, 50, 35, 20. She tried to pull over, but the steering wheel wouldn't turn. The truck continued straight, continued slowing, and then she saw it ahead, an exit ramp. Not marked on her GPS, not listed on any sign, but there it was, and her truck was taking it automatically. Her steering and acceleration completely non-responsive. The exit ramp led to a rest stop, the same rest stop. Angela recognized the picnic tables, the information kiosk, the vending machines. Her truck guided itself back to the truck parking area and stopped in the exact same spot she'd parked before. The engine shut off on its own. The silence was total. Angela sat in her dark cab and felt something break inside her. Richard had been telling the truth. This place did keep you. This place didn't let you leave. She didn't sleep that night. She sat in her truck and watched through her windows as the other drivers moved occasionally between their vehicles and the bathrooms. Zombie-like, mechanical, people who'd stopped thinking of escape and started thinking only about surviving another day in limbo. When dawn came, turning the desert sky orange and purple, Angela climbed down from her cab and approached Richard.